Welcome to CRM Tuesdays, episode 3. Today, our topic is data done right. Clean
Mhm.
data, clear strategy. I am here with the amazing, brilliant Omi Diaz Cooper from Diaz Cooper. Hi, Omi.
Hi, that's some big shoes to fill there.
For those of you joining for the first time, we're doing these, dropping these once a month, first Tuesday of every month. And then each Tuesday in between months, we're pulling segments, takeaways. So, with the intent of making these really useful, really action oriented. If you want to go back, episode 1, we talked about the power of aligning CRM implementation with the clear content strategy and how HubSpot can become a true revenue engine when you get both right. In episode 2, we got into the hype and reality of AI, what works, what backfires, and how to use it to scale personalization and performance without losing your voice or your edge. And as I mentioned, today we're shifting the focus to the foundation underneath all of that, your data. Because if your data is full of old, messy, or duplicate records, no amount of automation or content strategy is going to save you. So, in this episode, we're going to break down how data hygiene impacts performance, what to look for, and how to fix it. Plus, we've put together 2 practical tools you can download and actually use today. So, with that, I'm going to dig in, Omi, and start with dirty CRM problems. What so dirty. What are the most common data hygiene issues you see that completely derail CRM performance?
Yeah, I love this topic. This is the kind of topic that tends to make people cringe a little bit because I think at the end of the day, everyone understands that data problems will compound over time. So not only can it cause problems in the short term, and of course, dirty data is ugly, but it's not just a cosmetic thing, right? It can cause all kinds of problems. And so I think some of the most common ones that we've seen are going to be outdated information, right? So people move jobs or they, move companies and the sales team has the old contact information. That's a pretty common one. A very, very common one is what we call lack of format standardization. So that's a fancy term for saying you're saying the same thing in different ways throughout your CRM. So that can mean telephone numbers that are not formatted correctly. That can mean, states and address formatting being inconsistent, right? And so that leads to duplicate, records. It can lead to unclear information. No one's sure which one to contact, for example, or, it takes longer to launch things because you have to go cleaning up as you're trying to launch things. And so that one is a pretty common one. And one that a lot of people don't really think about is having missing or incorrect deal stage
Yeah,
data. That's
yeah.
a big one. That can really derail your go-to-market strategies for both marketing and sales teams. And so, you could be sending something that's top of funnel to someone that's already ready to convert, for example, and that can really cause a lot of deterioration of your strategic go-to-market initiatives.
So that leads me to the next question, which you touched on, but how does poor data quality impact a company's ability to create an effective
Yeah,
go-to-market strategy?
so many ways, so many ways that bad data can really bite you, right? And so for one thing, your rev ops or your sales teams can't generate reliable forecasts. So that's going to be a problem. Your marketing teams are not going to be able to effectively target specific segments, right? So whether that's based on missing data or that's based on lifecycle data that's incorrect, marketing can't target as effectively as they
Yeah.
could. And in sales, you have problems optimizing your pipeline. managing your pipeline, and even providing meaningful coaching to your sales teams because you don't really have good reporting on what's actually going on. So basically, bad data can mean everything from, really bad campaign performance all the way to just untrustworthy reporting. And when you can't trust the data in your CRM, your executive team can't make informed strategic decisions.
Yeah, got it. Why are duplicate records such a big deal and more damaging than people might think?
Yeah. So we have this term in the aviation industry called digital twins, and those are a good thing generally. A data duplicate or a data twin is not a good thing for a lot of reasons. So basically, it's not just cosmetic, right? It having a bunch of duplicates, first of all, defeats the whole purpose of having a single source of truth,
Mm,
right? So most people rely on their CRM to be that complete and single source of truth on what's going on with their contacts and their deals, right? So duplicates can cause confusion, like who owns a certain contact, who owns, the contract.
mhm.
It can cause billing relationship lack of clarity, which could lead to, potentially double billing or underbilling, right? So think about how having like the same company under a slightly different name one or
Yeah,
two times in your CRM can cause fragmented information, right? Some information might live under, Delta Corp. Another piece of vital information and other contacts might live under Delta Inc., for example. I'm just making this up, but you get it,
right,
right?
right.
It's
Yeah,
gonna it's gonna cause fragmentation, right? And it's going to mean that your teams are gonna have trouble accessing that full picture of the intelligence they should have in their CRM so that they can strategically manage their accounts, right? So this is going to affect every department from sales all the way through customer service, right? Not having that complete picture is one of the biggest problems with, duplicates.
yeah. The big deal. So
Hmm.
big question. And I feel like, with CRMs in general, kind of ownership and accountability is often very murky. But in terms of the data hygiene part specifically, who should own that? And where do most companies get this wrong?
Yeah. So this is also a very common problem, which is that we like to say that data hygiene is everyone's problem. But the issue comes when you have that murky responsibility chain, right? You get what's called the tragedy of the commons. I don't know if you've ever heard that little slogan, but what that means is that everybody assumes
Yeah,
someone else is responsible for it, and so nobody gets it done. So when there
right.
isn't a clear structure of who is responsible for data quality maintenance, then it doesn't happen, right? So the other issue is when you put sole responsibility on one department. So for example, knee-jerk reaction, a lot of people tend to assign it to their IT department.
Uh,
Sounds logical, right?
yeah,
But IT often lacks the business context to be
right.
able to understand the relationships between the data and what's going on, in the business, right? On the other end of the spectrum, some companies just rely on their individual sales reps to manage their own data hygiene. Well, sales reps are always focused on revenue generating activities. That's their number one goal. So they don't really have that systematic perspective that you need for them to have a comprehensive data governance system. Like you can't really expect them to do that. So for us, we like to take a RevOps centric approach. And what that means is that revenue operations is the strategic orchestrator of the data. And then we establish clear ownership of different parts of the data based on functional areas. So for example, marketing operations should own like lead source tracking, UTM parameters, engagement data, right?
Hmm.
Sales operations should manage deal stages, pipeline fields, account hierarchies, for example. And then customer success should manage account health scores, success plans, tracking onboarding metrics, that kind of thing. So the idea is to think about it about like data stewardship versus ownership. So no one person owns it, or no one department owns it entirely. Everybody is being a good steward of their part of the data, right? But then you have to have some processes in place in order to make sure that everyone has similar data governance rules that are supporting your
Yeah.
business objectives.
Nice. So I like to call this section practical playbook. So we give our audience some things they can actually do, some actions they can take. What are three non-negotiables you recommend every company implement for ongoing data hygiene?
Absolutely. So yeah, so this is what we're now going to get into a little bit of the meat of those processes that we need, because at the end of the day, you want to prevent problems versus letting them accumulate and, have to clean up a huge mess after all these problems occur. So my non-negotiable number one is automated validation and standardization.
Mm,
So having naming conventions, having pre-configured fields or drop downs, or selected pick lists versus open text for every property,
right.
right? Having workflows that are going to be formatting standardized things like phone numbers or like states, regional information, that kind of thing. And of course, utilizing real-time data enrichment tools like Breeze AI, for example, to keep your data updated, right? So you want to think about establishing rules also about what kind of data and when it should be added to the CRM. So you can't just let people add whatever they want whenever they
Right.
want. So you have to have rules around that to keep everything nice and tidy. So yeah, automated validation and standardization, number one. Number two, regular audit and cleansing cycles. So again, you don't just leave messes on the floor until you can't walk in your house anymore. You have to have, regular health assessments of your data so that you can clean it up before it becomes unsurmountable, right? So we recommend quarterly health assessment cycles, right? And then having standardized processes for data cleansing. So things that are, important are things like removing bounced email addresses,
Yeah.
updating job titles, and company information, and of course, merging those dirty duplicates, right?
Yeah.
So a big tip there is to make sure that you archive any old data before removing it from your active systems, right? And then a practical tip there is that HubSpot has a great data hygiene workspace that can help you identify and correct most of these issues. So the key again there is to make sure that you have regular maintenance to prevent the problem from becoming overwhelming. So number two, regular
Yep.
audits and cleansing cycles. And then last but certainly not least, my number three non-negotiable is user training and process and enforcement. So as I mentioned before, data hygiene is a shared responsibility. However, you can't expect teams to follow rules that they don't
Right.
know, or to create data hygiene processes that they might be unfamiliar with, right? So you want to make sure that you're training your teams on data entry standards, the validation requirements, and what responsibilities they have to maintain their data clean, right? So the RevOps team should provide role-specific guidance to help your sales rep, your marketing pros, and your customer success managers to understand how their daily data practices impact overall system effectiveness. Because you don't want like the practical to overcome, and take over. You want them to have rules and guidelines to
Yep.
follow.
Amazing. All right. Bonus question. What's a dead giveaway that a company's CRM is quietly bleeding money?
Oh, this is so painful to watch, right? The problem with red flags is that sometimes they're kind of whispering, or they appear
Mhm.
very gradually, and nobody really notices them until the impact hits you right on the bottom line, right? So a couple of giveaways tend to be things like revenue forecasts that are consistently like off, like missing targets, or if you're experiencing significant month-to-month variations, but market conditions are stable. That's usually a big red flag that there's something going on with your data. Another one would be performance degradation, right? So decreased conversion rates
Yeah.
or decreased performance from your sales team. We call that revenue leakage. And so you might be leaking revenue.
Yeah.
If if you're seeing these things, it's most likely a data problem. And last but certainly not least is, if you're seeing that people are managing their data, that's taking them longer than actually
Mm.
doing their job. When it takes them so long to manage their data and they're not doing their job, your company's losing money. So a lot of people tend to be afraid of data cleansing projects because, oh, the cost or whatever. But I can guarantee you that the cost of poor data quality will far exceed the cost of cleaning it up or maintaining it clean as you go along.
Wow, those were amazing, amazing tips, amazing resources. So yeah, let me turn the tables over to you to grill me for a little while.
Yeah, thank you. So I love interviewing you on these topics because, we both come at it from like, I call it slightly different sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And you're just so knowledgeable about, content and personalization and messaging, and all of that is really driven at the end of the day by data. So I'd love to hear from you. How do you see that CRM data that's clean, right, can unlock better, more strategic content personalization, for example?
I mean, my belief is if your data is dirty, your message is going to be too, because clean data lets us stop guessing and start connecting. It tells us where someone is in their journey, what they care about, and how we can be useful. I find that without that, we're sending kind of blanket mass emails with, the personalization being insert name here. Therefore, the content might land flat.
Yeah,
Real personalization is about relevance, not just fields.
I love that. That's absolutely right. So, what have you seen as a typical or most overlooked opportunity when segmenting audiences for content?
Yeah, you touched on it. Most companies don't segment by intent or stage. They'll do it by industry, they'll do it by company size, but they'll forget to tag the behavior, like what pages someone viewed, or how many times they visited, or if they clicked an offer. That's gold when it comes to mapping content or timing. If I know you read 3 case studies, I'm not sending you a basic awareness blog, right? I'm sending you something that's more, let's talk ROI. So I think that's really what gets overlooked so much, is we tend to segment or tag or forget the tagging by things that don't really give us insight into the type of content that's going to resonate most.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that also includes like what pain points that
Yeah.
the audience is looking to solve, right? So along that same vein, let's talk about message mismatching, right? So do you have any stories that you can share about bad data leading to like a major miss in messaging?
Too many, unfortunately. But one more recent one is we had a customer targeting decision makers and enterprise IT, but half their list was filled with job candidates and vendors, or those duplicated Gmail contacts. So the campaign underperformed because the message was crafted for someone it never reached. Just wasn't, it was like speaking 2 different languages. So it wasn't, a copy or content issue. It was really a data issue masquerading as a strategy problem. So
Mm.
luckily, once we were able to clean the list, their open rates and engagement doubled. So sometimes those mistakes, if you're looking at them and willing to dig in, and you've got a partner that can dig in with you, they end up being blessings in disguise, because you can then ask the questions, well, why is this not resonating? And those questions allowed us to dig in and make those corrections after the fact, and then get better results.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I feel like a lot of times it's the knee-jerk reaction to think, well, it must be the content or the creative, but oftentimes it is not. It's the targeting or the segmenting that's off base. And so you need to look at the data and not just,
Absolutely.
yeah, excellent. So this leads me to my next question, which is about using, strategy-driven content, right? So how do you use your CRM data to shape content during strategy and not just like tweaking subject lines?
Yeah. I mean, you've touched on this in some of the previous episodes, and I think this is one of the great things about having a CRM is we can pull those content ideas straight from the CRM if the CRM is being updated and maintained properly. So common objections and deal notes can turn into, blog articles. Lost deals due to timing can turn into nurture campaigns. Sales might be asking for a better way to explain pricing. Maybe they every time they get to that part, they kind of lose the customer. So that can be a one pager. So we really look at it like the CRM is the blueprint and it tells us what questions people are asking, what's slowing down deals, and where content can actually move revenue forward. We look at content as like the sales lubrication, to really help solve those things. And that works really well when, sales and marketing are talking together, and also you've got those insights in the CRM that you're regularly like looking at, analyzing, and that will also get your salespeople to put the notes in, because if they see, oh wow, like things happen as a result of this, it's not just for my edification and me to remember. Yes, that's part of it. But like as a company, if your team is looking at that and building tools to solve that, it really motivates sales more to be like, I want to keep my records up to date because then I can get the support I need. And it's not just talking about it as an idea in a meeting. It's backed by facts.
Yeah, I love that. So, can you give us like a bonus, easy win, practical tip? Like, for example, what's one thing a company could do this week to align content and their CRM better?
Depending on how big your contact list is, I do think an easy, well, I won't call it easy, but an action that every company could take is run a contact export and sort it by life cycle stage and last activity date. And then you can highlight anyone active but unlabeled, right? And that can be your engaged but ignored group. And you can create some email sequences just for them, like acknowledging the silence, offering value, asking one simple question: is this still relevant for you? So you'll be able to re engage more leads than a more generic campaign. So that's one. Like I said, it might not be as easy as it sounds, but it's certainly something you could take action on and really see where you maybe don't have that data filled out, and you can use some content strategies to work on getting it filled out.
I love that. One that we like to use is the close loss reengagement. So after 3 to 6 months of close loss, we do have a drop down for the reason. And then you can re-engage based on that reason, right? Or
Yeah.
even, just say like, hey, how's the project going? You wouldn't believe, but we've gotten business, by doing that. Like, oh yeah, it went okay, but now we need help with this other thing, and we don't really want to use the original company that we went with. So sometimes
Yeah,
that could be a simple one that you could mine some gold, like you like to say.
absolutely. So I have a few things that you and I can kind of just, brainstorm on together. I'll call this alignment check. And what happens when CRM and content teams work from different or dirty data?
Different data is a big problem, just as big as dirty data, because a lot of companies work in silos,
Yeah.
and the marketing team has their own data set and the sales team has their own data set. And, misalignment can cause all the problems that you talk about, messaging issues, targeting issues, degradation of campaigns. From a content perspective, what are you seeing?
I think it's chaotic, right? It just creates chaos. You get
Yeah.
messages going to the wrong people at the wrong time. Sales gets annoyed. Marketing says the content works, but no one uses it. And at the leadership level, they just see wasted budget. So the counter to that is clean shared data is really the glue, and it aligns strategy, targeting, and delivery so the whole system can actually work.
Yeah, I love that. We want to see people rowing together towards the same goal versus pointing fingers at each other, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about just the 2025 outlook, and what will separate the winners from the laggards when it comes to CRM data in the next few years.
Mhm.
Any thoughts or hypothesis?
Last time we talked about AI,
Yeah.
and people always want to jump on that, and they think AI is a magic, bullet or whatever, but AI is not. AI will only magnify what's already there. So I really strongly believe that the winners are going to be the ones that have good, clean, unsiloed data. They have alignment between their sales, marketing, and customer service teams. And they're making a conscious effort to keep that data clean on a regular basis, because then they can use automation and AI and whatnot in order to amplify their results, right? And not just start from, the poopy stuff that's not going to get them, really anywhere.
Similar, I think the winners are going to treat data like a product, something that they're continuously improving. So not just like an afterthought. They'll audit it, they'll structure it. I mean, everything that you went through in your portion, I mean, to me is just gold. And the companies that do that will win. And I think the ones that lose will keep pumping content out through a broken system and wonder why it doesn't convert. So to me, 2025 is really the opportunity for companies to win is content without data is noise, and data without strategy is just clutter. And so I think if the companies that take that on will be able to stand out and beat the competition.
I love that. Yep. Agreed.
Amazing. All right. Well, before we go, we want to leave you with a couple things. So you don't need to overhaul your entire CRM this week, but you do need to know if your data is helping or hurting your strategy. So we put two practical tools you can use right now. You can grab the CRM data hygiene and content alignment checklist. It's a simple way to review how clean your data is and whether your content strategy is actually aligned with your segments. And second, we've got a mini data hygiene audit, which is a 10-minute diagnostic that shows you how to pull your contact data, check for the biggest red flags, and self-score how dirty your CRM really is. So both tools are meant to give you clarity fast and help you decide whether it's time to tackle the fix yourself or call in for backup, which Omi and her team are amazing at all of that.
Well, I love this, and I'd love to leave our audience with some actionable takeaways. So I'll go ahead and say, first of all, you said it best. Your CRM is not a filing cabinet, and you don't want to clutter it up with bad data. So your CRM is really a growth engine. So you have to treat data hygiene like a revenue function. Second takeaway is, if you want to target better and sell faster and create more relevant content, start with structured fields and
Yeah.
consistent formats. And last but not least, automation without accuracy is noise. Don't waste automation on dirty data. Don't waste AI on dirty data. Get the basics right before scaling outreach.
Amazing. I think this was another great success with just chock full of value for our listeners. So if you're listening to this and it made your head spin or your stomach drop, good. You now know what needs attention. And again, we're always here to help and make this easier for you and help show you how to turn your CRM into a real revenue engine. So Omi, as always, I thank you. You're just brilliant, and just the expertise that flows out of your mouth during these sessions is just worth so much. So I know our audience is getting tons of value, and I know we've got some good topics coming up over the coming month that our audience can look forward to. So thank you. And I'll look forward to talking to you next time.
Yeah, likewise, thank you. And thanks to the audience for listening in. And don't forget to grab your 2 bonus resources.
Absolutely. All right. Till next time.